Okay, AFDA students, so in the notes for Unit 5, Day 4, we're talking about domain and range. And just a vocabulary review, the set of all x values is called the domain, and the set of all y values is called the range. So I'm going to show you a few of these, and then I'm going to encourage you, since we do have a word bank at the bottom, to try these and then pause the video and come back. But let's do a couple together first. So the first thing we're going to do is try to write the domain in words. And so you want to start at the left side of your notes, and you want to go to the right side of your notes. And so here on the left side of the function, your first value is -2, and your last value is 1. Now the filled in dot here means we want to include the -2, and the open dot means we want to get really close to 1 but not include the 1. So looking at your word bank down here, you're going to find the words that match that. And there's 2 that say from -2 to 1. And I think this is the right one because it says including -2 and not including 1. So we're going to write those words on your notes. Okay, so then after you have the words down, you want to put the domain in interval notation. And so we're going to find the interval notation that matches that from our bank. So there are 2 with -2, 1. This one includes both the -2 and the 1, and this one has a square bracket on -2 to include it, and it has a parentheses on the 1 to show that we're not including the 1. So this is the one we're going to use. The next one is asking for inequality set notation. And so we're going to find the same domain, but in inequality notation. And so down here, I'm looking for the one that's from -2 to 1, and then the equals shows that we include -2, and this shows that we do not include 1. So I'm going to put that up here. All right, and then the last one is writing the domain as a set of discrete points. So there are points on this function. There's a point at -2, there's a point at -1, there's a point at 0, but there are also points in between. So I've got like -1.9, -1.8, -1.7. I've got lots of points on here, and it's impossible for me to list them all. So if I went down here, you might find some points that are on your function. However, there's none of these are going to work for all of the points. I can't list all of the points. So I'm going to write no set notation of discrete points. Okay. So we're going to work on the words for the next one, and then I'm going to ask you to pause the video to try the rest of it without looking ahead. So for this one, remember the domain is everything from the left to the right, and this arrow is not only pointing up, it's also pointing to the right, the left. This one is pointing up and it's also pointing to the right. So over here on the left, I have -infinity, and on the right, I have +infinity. So we're looking for the domain that's going to give us all of the numbers from -infinity on the left all the way to +infinity on the right. And that would be this first one. So I'm going to take a minute to copy that. All right, so I want you now to pause the video, and I want you to try to do the rest and then come back and check. All right, so you should be checking your answers now. We're going to do the domain in interval notation, and I want to find the interval notation that matches my words. And here it is, -infinity to +infinity. And then also looking for the inequality notation, and here it is, x, or -infinity is less than x, which is less than +infinity. And then finally, looking for a set of points, if I want all of the numbers from -infinity to +infinity, I can't list them all, so I'm going to use this again, no set notation of discrete points. Okay, next row. This is a set of discrete points, and so I'm looking for their x values in particular. I do not have it connected, so I don't have the numbers in between. So I only have -1, 0, 1, and 2. And that's here. The domain is only the numbers -1, 0, 1, and 2. Because the points aren't connected, I cannot write an interval, and I cannot write an inequality. So I'm going to write no interval and no inequality. And then lastly, I can write a set of discrete points. So I'm looking for the same numbers, and I believe it's this first one. Okay, so take a minute, make sure you've got that, and then turn the page, and we'll talk about the range. This is the same question that was on the top of the last page. The domain is still the x values, and the range is still the y values. So now we're going to refocus on the y values from the smallest at the bottom to the largest at the top. A lot of people get confused about this because they want to focus in on this endpoint here, but that point is in the middle. And so we're actually going to be talking about the smallest y value of 0 to the largest y value of 4. So looking down here, we're going to look for that. It's going to be this last one. Okay, so now I want to do this in interval notation. So I'm looking for the interval notation that is 0 to 4, including both endpoints. And I can see it down here. And because I'm including that, I do want to have a less than or equal sign here. And because it's an interval, I cannot write this as a set of points because there are infinitely many points on that graph. So I'm going to put no set notation of discrete points. All right, so pause the video and try to finish this up, and then come back and check your work. All right, so checking your work, for this one, the bottom of the graph is at y equals 0, and both of these arrows are going up to infinity. So for this one, we have 0 to infinity. And looking at the word bank, as the range is all of the numbers from 0 to positive infinity. Okay, we're looking for the interval notation that matches that. And here we have it. We do want to include the 0, but you can't ever get to infinity. So that's why we always have a parentheses on infinity. Then we're going to find the inequality notation that matches that. And here we go. And because it's an interval, we cannot possibly list all of the points. So we'll also write no set notation of discrete points. Okay, and then the last one, you should have listed just the individual y values. So this time we have to look at the y values 0. These both have a y value of 1, and this has a y value of 4. So the range is only the numbers 0, 1, and 4. Okay, because we only have 4 points, we do not have an interval or an inequality. But we can list it as a set of y values. So again, the y values were 0, 1, and 4. Okay, so on the back, you have an activity that you want to do in Desmos. It's helpful to have your paper out, and then you can open this in Unit 5 Day 4 folder in Schoology so that you can click this link. This link will give you this graph. And what we need to do is, out of this graph, we want to be able to create these initials. All of the equations are there already, but we're going to add some domain restrictions. So I'll show you a few of them. And then once you have done all of the domain restrictions to make it look like these initials, there are actually some range restrictions as well. Then you're going to open the form down here, and you're going to put the link to your graph. Remember when you're working in Desmos to save often. Okay, so once you have your graph open, the first thing you want to do is just focus in on the E, and so there's a lot of equations here in the way. So I'm going to keep the first 4 on, and I'm going to turn off the color on the last ones. All right, and then when you're doing your inequalities, you want to look and see what should the first x be. So I'm looking at the red one. The first x should be -6, and comparing it to the paper, I can see that the last x will be -3. So I want to do -6 is the smallest, and it's less than x, which is less than -3. And that cuts it off like that. You'll be able to do that restriction on the orange and on the blue, and then when you get to the purple one here, all of the x's are -6, so it does not help to restrict your x's. So this time you're going to restrict your y's. So looking at the y values, the smallest y I want is -3, and the largest y I want is +3. And so for this one, I'm going to restrict y values. Make sure you put a y instead of an x there. Okay, so once you've fixed the blue one and the orange one too, then you can turn on the ones to make the C, restrict those, and then you can turn on the last ones there. And then remember, once you're all done, and also along the way, you want to hit the save button. Make sure you're logged in before you hit the save button. And then you are going to share your graph, copy the link, and then go back into the notes to put your link in this form.